Good morning, people from St Elizabeth's and any others who may be watching on this morning. I hope you're well. It's lovely to have you with us in this way. This is the next of our readings and talks to be listened to in conjunction with our live stream communion service. And so a reading from the Bible. Reading being from Acts chapter 5, verses 17 to 26. Then the high priest and all his associates, who were members of the party of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. They arrested the apostles and put them into the public jail. But during the night an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. "Go, stand in the temple courts," he said, "and tell the people the full message of this new life." At daybreak they entered the temple courts, as they had been told, and began to teach the people. When the high priest and his associates arrived, they called together the Sanhedrin, the full company of the elders of Israel, and sent to the jail for the apostles. But on arriving at the jail, the officers did not find them there. So they went back and reported, "We found the jail securely locked, with the guards standing at the doors, and when we opened them, we found no one inside." On hearing this report, the captain of the temple guard and the chief priests were puzzled, wondering what would become of this. Then someone came and said, "Look, the men you put in jail are standing in the temple courts teaching the people." At that, the captain went with his officers and brought the apostles. They did not use force because they feared that the people would stone them. Don't know about you, but I think that there is a playful, mischievous nature to God. I hope that's not a surprise. After all, He's created us with playful natures too. By mischievous, I mean having a fondness for stirring things up in a playful way. The other day we had a reading from Luke's Gospel, the story of Jesus appearing to two of his disciples on the road to Emmaus, and the surprising way that Jesus did that, playfully acting to go on and not to stay with his friends. Now today we have the apostles all rounded up and put into the public jail for healing people in the temple precincts. We read that the apostles were miraculously released from jail, and that an angel told them to go back to where they were before they were arrested, to do more acts of healing and wholeness to the people, and to tell people about this new way of life of following Jesus. Now, if that isn't a little bit mischievous, I'm not sure what is. This really ups the ante with those who wanted to arrest the apostles for a second time, and were told that the temple authorities became afraid that the people would stone them for wanting to arrest the apostles. God would have known that this course of action, of actually bringing the apostles from prison, would have challenged the authorities in this way. God would have known that this show of power would result in the newly revealed religion, originally referred to as the Way, how that would eventually split from Judaism. The Way is the original name for those who are following Jesus as the resurrected Son of God. These are massive things going on here. God reveals his awesome nature in freeing the disciples. God reveals his new direction by beginning to split the apostles away from the Jewish religion with which they had inherently been part of since birth. These are amazing things going on here, and their sociological outworkings are massive. The evolution away from Judaism to that of Christianity is something that the Christian Church does not often discuss now. How this happened, how challenging this would have been, is not widely reflected on. We just take it as being part of our ancient history. Yet it would have been socially challenging. And this was all part of God's plan for letting the wider world know about his love for them. If you think that God acts in a tidy fashion, then the more that you dig into today's reading, the more you see that God does not act in a tidy fashion. Yes, it is wonderful that the disciples miraculously escape from jail, yet they are flung straight back into confrontation again. Yes, it is amazing how that small sect became Christianity and how it broke away from the then very dominant Judaism. Yet that process would have been painful for all to have lived through it. Many Christians who were once Jewish would have been socially ostracized from their neighbours. So God works through difficult circumstances. Indeed, he can act provocatively, or best playfully, through such times. I wonder what the disciples thought when, having been sprung for jail, the angel tells them to go straight back into the temple to carry on where they left off. God acts through challenging times. Why say this? Well, if you think that God acts in a tidy fashion, I really don't think that that is the case. If you think that God's disciples will get an easy ride through challenging times, I don't think that's the case either. In other words, trusting in God neither provides a gentle way forward or an easy time. But God does act. What those first disciples discovered was that should they face difficult times, God stood with them through it. Remember, those first disciples were not superhuman. They would have been ordinary people just like you and me. There would have been moments when they needed boldness in the face of feeling afraid. Yet their experience was that they could trust God in those dark moments, and he, God, would see them through. Now, we don't know how the next few weeks, the next few months will pan out. Even once lockdown is ended, the financial consequences of the past few weeks will become more evident. Yet within all these challenges, God is still there. And we are challenged to trust God and to recognize he stands with us when things feel a bit wobbly. I guess the question is, when we do feel wobbly, do we seek to look out for how and where God is standing alongside us, or do we just imagine he is not there? We might recognize something of his presence with us through our prayerful conversations with him. As we read his story in the Bible, there may be moments of simply feeling that God is close to you. God does not always act tidily, and God does not always act gently, but he does act. He is able to act playfully as well as provocatively. The thing is, God does act. He does support those who follow him. It's just that in those moments, we often have to look carefully as to how he is drawing close to us. As you look at the world around us over the next few days, look out for where God is supporting you. He does.